Hello. Today we'll take a look at the new features in TopBraid EDG 6.0. Starting with the home page, our focus will primarily be on the features as they manifest themselves in the user interface. You'll see this new area that lists any governance roles that the current user may have for an asset collection or an entire subject area. In case of an asset collection, you'll have a link to open it. In case of an area, as it is here, you'll have a link to go to the subject area pages with that area selected, and then you'll see your role and you see all the asset collections in that area. Another change that you will notice on the home page is that logout link is no longer located in the header. Instead, you'll click on your username and you have a logout button right there. The help pages access is still there, accessible through this question mark. But if you're a TopBraid EDG administrator, the link to the administration console has been moved to the navigator under your dashboard section. And also, if you want to see a release of TopBraid EDG version that you're running, it is now located at the bottom of the navigator. Let's go to a homepage for taxonomies and see what new features are there for those of you that using EDG VM package. First of all pages listing an asset collection of a certain type have some changes in the styling. For example, each now has an icon that signifies that asset collection. Further, you now have only one link. There used to be two links. One would go to tabs or operations, and another would go to the content. Now there is a single link because of the redesign of the tabs. They are always visible, and when you're working with content, you could switch to any of the tabs that displayed on the tab and then go back. You will also notice that the import and export tabs are now separated, and between them there is a transform tab that lets you run various transformations. At minimum, there is ability to execute rules, and then depending on the asset collection, there are some additional pre-built transformations that are available. So let's go back to display of the taxonomy, and let's take a look at the form for a resource and see what changes are there. First of all, there is now a button to open it in a separate page if you want to have a full width display. Then the delete button is now on its own. It used to be under operations menu. Also, the menu for displaying visualizations, there is now a separate menu from the other actions or operations menu. So there is a separate icon here. Further, there is this icon that activates and deactivates data validation. So normally data validation is performed when you make some changes to the data or when you run the problems and suggestions report. With this new option, you could have data validation performed every time the resource is displayed, and then you have any alerts that may be present at the bottom, and you'd have some indication of whether there are problems. I could switch it off and on. Keep in mind that if it's turned on, now with switching it off, it doesn't do validation. If it's turned on, then every time resource is displayed, validation is going to run, so it may have some impact on performance. Further, there is a source code panel now on the right, available when you open the form of full width. And that gives you access to information about this resource in RDF serialization. You could also edit RDF directly in that panel. Obviously, this is a very low level operation, and normally the source code panel will stay collapsed. Now let's take a look at how this looks like if you start a workflow. So let's click on the workflows and start a new workflow for the demo. You'll see the same color, same tabs as you saw for the production copy, now displaying in the context of the workflow. And in case where the tab doesn't make sense in the context of the workflow, for example, the workflows tab, obviously you can't start a workflow when you are in the workflow. In those situations, the tab is grayed out, and when you click on it, it gives you a chance to return back to the production copy. Other than that, you see again the first tab that gives you access to the content, and so on. So everything is displayed. You know that you are in the workflow and the working copy because of the color change. And if you want to go back to production copy, you could click on this X button that will take you back to the production copy. Also, in the context of the workflow, you have another icon that is located before the tab that gives you access to the content of your asset collection, and that brings up this workflow status and transition screen. So now let's return to our production copy. And these are the main differences that you will see for taxonomies, and of course some of the features that I've described are applicable across all asset collections. Let's now take a look at ontologies. Navigate to this schema.org, for example. As you could see, the same situation with tabs and so on. You'll see the additional pre-built transformations here. So in the context of the ontologies, there is a pre-built transformation that lets you convert from RDFS OWL to SHACL. Also, on the Manage tab, there are some additional options. Some of them have to do with managing the history and handling of audit trail in the context of context of workflow. They are the same for all asset collection. This option to include this asset collection in the index for Search the Edge is also the same for any asset collection. It's not specific to an ontology. This lets you ensure that this collection will be indexed for the global search the edge. You could also click on this option when you first create an asset collection. Now, this doesn't change your search configuration screen. There is still a separate search the edge configuration screen where you could select what collections should be indexed. But here is a new option that is specific to ontologies, which is ability to prefer SHACL over OWL RDFS. Now, when you select this option, when you create new properties and classes, automatically shapes are created for them. So each class and property already are treated as shapes. So for example, let's take a look at this example. You see right now the properties have been created when they created the domain and range declarations or axioms were created. But now since we have a prefer SHACL turned in, so if I create a new property, let's call it test. You see the property page has changed. It's automatically created a shape for this property. And now when I select characteristics, I'm using shackle. So let me do something like this, min and max count, to make it required, save changes. So now when I click on test, you see that there is no domain and range statements, there's just shackle shapes. So actually let me make another change here and switch it to, or rather select a data type, so you see string, make changes. So instead of using a string as a range, we put it directly into the shackle shape, and shapes are created automatically. Another small change for classes is that now when you display class diagrams, there is a number of options. So you could do, for example, associations at just one level, as they were available before, or you could have a diagram with two levels of associations that shows a larger piece of the ontology. You could also select to show it without attributes, select to show it with inheritance, without inheritance, and so on. There's just more options for the diagrams. So I think I've covered taxonomies and ontologies now. For those of you that are using business glossary package or metadata management packages, you have been working with tabular editors, and the tabular editor has been redesigned. So let me go as an example to one of the glossaries. Before I go there, one other change that has been made in 6.0 that's relevant to the Edge vocabulary management package is that now you could use problems and suggestions report to automatically build crosswalks. And that's, crosswalks can be between any two asset collections. So that works for all packages, not just Edge VM package. But obviously, if you want to build a crosswalk between two taxonomies or two ontologies, there is now problems and suggestions report will now automatically find matches for you. All right, so this is a new tabular editor application. You'll see a number of changes here. So, for example, you no longer have to switch to a search form to select new columns. The column selection is right there. And in fact, there isn't a search form per se. You select the search criteria right here. So let's say we have 55, you have 55 entries. Sorry, I clicked back on the browser button. So you have 55 entries here, and let's say we want to limit them. And we could, for example, select definition as a field to search on. And we could enter here, let's say FIS, and run the search. So you build your own search form by selecting from this drop-down menu the appropriate fields. If you click on any of the rows here, the form will always open in a separate tab to be full width. And then you could go up and down among your selection in the table. Or you could close it to return back to the table. Notice that everything I pointed for taxonomies is true here as well. There's validation icon, the delete button is separate, and there is a source code panel and so on. So those are Those are features and options that are common to all packages and collection types. We go back to the table. Let me point out a few other things. So if you want to perform certain operations on a selected resource, you don't necessarily have to go into the form now, because you have options here. You could delete it, you could clone it, you could run operations from this gear menu. You could get access to visualizations for this selected resource. So like so, without having to go to the form itself. And by the way, when you are in this in the visualization display, you continue to have this resource form on the right, just as you did before. But this form, as you know, is not editable. However, there is now a link on top of it to make it easy for you to go to the editable form. And this is a change that's also available in other places, including, for example, problems and suggestions report. That lets you have a quick navigation into the edit view from your visual explorations. So let me close out of here, return back to the table. Let's talk about other options and features available in a search. You could still save search and view saved searches. This is available from this menu icon. And as you could see, you could save the search, you could save it as a default, etc. You could show a query. Another new feature of 6.0 release is support for GraphQL. So you could actually see a GraphQL query behind the search. And if you were to switch in advanced search mode, you'll see the GraphQL editor that lets you do things beyond what you could do here with the search widgets. Everything you used to be able to do in the search form is by the way still supported. So the advanced will give you sort of a GraphQL window that you could type in for more advanced operations. Also, going into exports, you will also see GraphQL queries as an option. So it gives you the same kind of an edit view. All right. Let's go back, and another option is that now you could turn on governance roles on per asset basis. This is available in the Manage tab. So you could click Enable per asset governance roles. And let me get back. And now if I select this and click on Edit, you'll see the governance roles section. So let me get, say, an option right here that you could always see. And governance roles, of course, are honored in the workflows, so you could build workflows that use these governance roles not only as previously available per asset collection or per subject area, but also now per specific asset. Let's switch back to the tabular view to see a couple of other options. So the drop-down navigator that lets you navigate between the different types of assets is still there, and there's also a tree-like navigation within that. This is better seen. Well, we could see it here, but it's better seen in an asset collection that has more asset types included in it. So let me switch to a lineage model example. All right, so there is a richer hierarchy here. So for example, we could go into the data asset viewpoint, and there you could see, expansion of the Miller columns for this hierarchical navigation. And let me select one of those resources to show you new visualization options that I included in release 6.0. So we've supported the lineage diagrams before, but the lineage diagrams have been significantly extended for this release. So now there is a variety of diagrams depending on what's available in a given, applicable in a given context. So you see downstream impact, upstream usage diagram. Usage diagrams are there for glossary terms, for example, and a few other resources. For data assets there, and other resources, there are downstream and upstream impact and traceability diagrams, as you could see here. And all the links between, so let me make it a little bit bigger. So all the links between resources in this view are clickable, and you see dependencies diagrams with additional information. For example, like this, where you see that there are some inputs to this data element, or rather it serves as an input to this data element serves as an input to some transform. And you also see that this data element complies with some policies. In cases where there is additional information, it is expandable and collapsible, so you see what policy it complies with. Also, everything displayed in the diagrams is selectable, and you could get to the form for that asset to see additional information. So if selected on the diagram, I could go and pick this more information icon and get directly to its form right here. And by the way, there are a separate videos called quick GROK videos that you could find on TopCode's website that give you more overview of each of these features that I'm going quickly through. There is a separate video about lineage diagrams. There is a separate video that explains all options on the form. There's a separate video for search, a separate video that goes deeper into each of the tabs and operations available on the tabs, a separate video for search, etc. So if you are interested to learn more about each of those features, please take a look at them. With that, let us go back. Well, actually, we don't need to go back, but let us talk about some of the administrative features and what you're going to see on the server administration console. The new user interface and options there. Well, first you see that this page has been broken down and better organized in categories. Now, if you go into the search into Edge configuration parameters, you could see a few new options. So let's start at the bottom. You see all the governance roles enabled or installed right now in your setup of Edge, and you could select here which governance roles could start workflows and create working copies and which cannot. So that's one option. Another option, another new option that you have is an access to setting up Edge enumerations. There is a number of built-in classes such as asset status, approval status, etc., that are used in Edge models. On this page, you could configure the actual values for them, and then they will be used, throughout with all the resources that, for example, need to have a status or need to have confidentiality level, etc. As you see, these are built in, and you could load more from your TopBraid Edge project, and you could also modify them here, and then they are available throughout your Edge asset collections. Let's go back and see what else is new. And by the way, you could still create your custom enumerations in an enumeration collection. So those are enumerations that are not related to built-in Edge classes and therefore configuring Edge. But if you want to configure Edge, the access is here on the screen. So in terms of repository options, there is now additional option that lets you keep all the information in one shared TDB database. This is right now a default, so if you have no values in application data storage, this is what's assumed. But if you want to change it, click on the edit button, and you see that there are options. One is the options previously available are still here, so using relational databases, using TDB where you have one database per graph, and using MarkLogic as a persistence. And now there's an additional option that is currently picked as a default, which is this shared graph database. So you'll see a couple of other new options. For example, in a disable source code editing, you saw me show the source code panel. If you don't want it to be available for your users, you could disable that. And then also ability to enable and disable creation of the various metrics dashboards. That feature of this metric dashboards has been available in 5.5. It's extended for 6.0 and is being further extended for 6.1. Also, you could enable or disable job titles in your organizational structures in TopBraid Edge. You could now in 6.0 assign users directly to organizations. In 5.5, this was only through job titles. If you want to keep 5.5 behavior, then you enable job titles. Otherwise, users will be allocated directly to the org structure. And I think I believe this is all for this screen. So let us go back to the console and see what else we have here. In 6.0, TopBraid Edge includes job scheduler, and you have a page to see all the scheduled jobs and their progress. There also have been some changes in permission management and rights management screens. The functionality is the same, but some of the terminology and names of the pages have been adjusted. Another new option that you see here is creating a trig export of all the data in TopBraid EDG. Trig is a turtle format of RDF serialization that creates a single data set of all the different graphs or asset collections in TopBraid EDG. This option is also available for individual asset collections. So if we go back and go to the Export tab, you see that there is an additional export of trig, which will export not just this current asset collection, but everything that has been included in it. And speaking of includes, another new feature is automation of management of includes. You could turn it on for an asset collection on the settings page. And here includes based on the subject area. So what this means is that all asset collections that are in the same subject areas will automatically include each other, and you don't need to manually manage includes. So this completes our short overview of new features in TopBraid EDG 6.0. Hopefully this gives you enough of the information and enough interesting new features for you to upgrade to. This video is made in July of 2018. TopBraid EDG is 6.0 is currently in beta, and you could still join beta testing. We expect to have general availability released the first week of August. Thank you for listening, and if you're interested in participating in the beta program, please let us know.